The startup sound of your Sega console? The plastic smell of an Atari joystick? The weird shape of the 3DO? These weren't just games. These were our childhoods. These are gaming brands that no longer exist, and every single one of them has a story worth telling. 7 companies, and by the end of this video, you're gonna miss all of them. Sega. Now, Sega is actually one of the few names on this list that managed to stay alive and even thrive. But that doesn't mean their story doesn't belong here, because what Sega lost wasn't the company itself. It was something harder to get back than profits. When most people think of Sega, they think of Sonic, but this company's story starts somewhere far more interesting. 1965 Japan. Sega wasn't making games back then. They were selling jukeboxes and slot machines to American military bases. They were basically an entertainment machine distributor. Their shift into gaming didn't happen until the late 70s. The real explosion came in 1988 with the Mega Drive. Sonic, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, Mortal Kombat. Sega wasn't just selling games, they were selling an identity. If you remember the "Genesis does what Nintendo don't" ads, you know, that wasn't just the slogan. It was an open challenge to Nintendo, and Sega had the muscle to back it up. In arcades, it was a whole different story. Outrun, Afterburner, Virtua Fighter, having Sega machines in your arcade meant something. Then 1998 came, and so did the Dreamcast. And honestly, the Dreamcast might be the most underrated console in history. Online gaming, a memory card with its own screen, open-world experiences like Shenmue that were absolutely insane for 1998. All of that existed before anyone else got there. But then Sony announced the PlayStation 2 and people just stopped buying. Nobody wanted a new console when something bigger was coming. Dreamcast was shelved in 2001. And Sega walked away from hardware forever. They still make games today, just on other people's platforms. That feeling you got when the Mega Drive startup sound hit, that's never coming back. Atari. 2 engineers named Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney rented a tiny office in California and started Atari. Their first game was Pong. 2 lines and a dot on a screen. Sounds boring, right? But Pong was so addictive that the very first machine they put in a bar broke down within days. Not because of a malfunction, because people had stuffed so many coins into it that the cash box couldn't hold any more. That's a true story. The golden era arrived in 1977 with the Atari 2600. Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Pitfall, Asteroids. Think about it. This was the first gaming console to walk into American living rooms. No Nintendo, no PlayStation, nothing, just Atari. By the early 80s, Atari was the fastest growing company in America. Bushnell later said, "Coming into work every morning back then felt like living inside a fairy tale." Then 1982 happened. The E.T. game arrived and triggered one of the biggest disasters in gaming history. They paid an astronomical licensing fee for the film, developed the game in 5 weeks, and printed millions of copies. Returns flooded back. They loaded the leftover stock into trucks and buried it in the New Mexico desert. For years, people thought it was an urban legend, until 2014 when someone actually went and dug it up, found it. In 1983, the entire North American gaming market collapsed, and Atari became the face of that collapse. The brand still exists in some form today, keeps changing hands, but for the generation that first picked up that 2600 joystick, Atari meant something that can't really be put into words. 3DO. 3DO is one of gaming history's most fascinating what-if stories. The man behind it was Trip Hawkins, the founder of Electronic Arts, not a random guy, someone who genuinely understood the industry. In 1993, Hawkins wanted to take gaming's next big leap and designed the 3DO interactive multiplayer. Technically, the console was genuinely ahead of its time. CD-based games, 32-bit processor, full-screen video playback, none of that existed on any other console in 1993. Hawkins also made a smart move by not manufacturing it himself. He set up a licensing model where Panasonic, Sanyo, and Goldstar each released their own versions of the same hardware. As an idea, idea, it was clever. And in that short window it had, some real gems came out. The very first Need for Speed was a 3DO exclusive, and people still talk about that version fondly today. Alone in the Dark, Road Rash, the platform wasn't empty by any means. But there was one problem, and it killed everything: the price. $699. In 1993, adjusted for today, that's roughly $1,400 to $1,500. While Sega and Nintendo were sitting at $150 to $200, nobody could justify that. The platform quietly shut down in 1996. Hawkins had the right vision, the right timing, the right technology, just the wrong price tag. And sometimes that's all it takes to bury something that deserved so much better. Midway Games. Midway's origins have nothing to do with games. 1958, Chicago. The company was selling bowling alley equipment. But in 1973, Midway acquired the North American distribution rights to Space Invaders, and that single move placed them right at the heart of the gaming world. Through the 80s, half the machines in any given arcade were Midways: Pac-Man, Galaga, Defender, Joust. But 1992 is when Midway truly made history. Mortal Kombat. Nothing like it existed at the time. Realistic digitized graphics, brutal finishing moves. Parents lost their minds. Complaint letters poured in. The whole thing got taken to the US Congress. And you know that ESRB rating system you see on every game today? That system exists directly because of Mortal Kombat. Midway changed the entire industry with one game. Then came NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, Cruisin' USA. Through the 90s, they were untouchable. By the mid-2000s, things started falling apart. Debt piled up, game quality slipped, management changed hands. In 2009, they filed for bankruptcy. Mortal Kombat went to Warner Brothers, and to be fair, WB did a solid job growing that franchise. But seeing a brand new Mortal Kombat or NBA Jam under Midway's name, that was always going to stay a dream. Acclaim Entertainment. Acclaim was founded in New York in 1987, and from day one, they were the licensed games company. WWF wrestling titles, NBA Jam Tournament Edition, Mortal Kombat 2 ports. In the early 90s, you couldn't look at a game shelf without seeing the Acclaim logo somewhere. The real turning point came in 1997 with Turok: Dinosaur Hunter. It was one of the best launch window games on the Nintendo 64, and repositioned Acclaim as a serious developer, not just a licenser. Turok 2, Shadow Man, NFL Quarterback Club followed. For a while, the company looked genuinely strong in both licensed and original IP, but Acclaim's management started making increasingly strange decisions. The most infamous, for the Burnout 2 launch in the UK, they actually called families of real road accident victims and offered them money to put game advertisements on their loved ones' gravestones. The offer was declined, but the story leaked to the press, and the damage to Acclaim's reputation was severe. Financially, they'd grown too fast, taken on heavy licensing costs, and couldn't hit the sales numbers needed to cover them. They shut down in 2004. The Turok series has been revived a few times since under different owners, just not under Hudson, but none of them ever captured what that N64 version had. Hudson Soft. Western audiences might not know Hudson Soft that well, but in Japan, this name was a quality guarantee for decades. Two brothers, Hiroshi and Yuji Kudo, founded the company in Sapporo in 1973. They started out selling electronic equipment, then shifted into writing games in the late 70s. That yellow B logo meant something to Japanese kids. This game is good, this game is safe. Their golden era didn't come in one wave, it came in several. In the mid-80s, they co-developed the PC Engine console with NEC, a platform that genuinely challenged both Sega and Nintendo in Japan. Then there was Bomberman, which became its own phenomenon. Dozens of platforms, hundreds of millions of copies sold from the 80s all the way into the 2000s. And then there's Mario Party. Co-developed with Nintendo, this series was the center of every friend hangout, every sibling argument, every Friday night, and Hudson was the name behind it. In the mid-2000s, Konami began slowly acquiring Hudson's shares. By 2011, they had full control, and in 2012, the Hudson Soft brand was officially shut down. Bomberman still comes out, just not under Hudson. Mario Party is still going, just developed by Nintendo directly now. Hudson Soft's disappearance didn't make a lot of noise. They just quietly left. But for anyone who remembers what it felt like to see that B logo, that silence was anything but small. THQ. Do you know what THQ stands for? Toy Headquarters. Yes, the company was founded in 1989 as a toy licensing firm. Then, in the mid-90s, they made a full pivot into gaming and shortened the name. And that pivot eventually turned them into a genuine giant. From the early to mid-2000s, THQ was putting out really good work. Saints Row, Red Faction, Darksiders, the WWE SmackDown series, UFC Undisputed, Destroy All Humans, De Blob, SpongeBob games. What made THQ special was that they made room for both big-budget AAA titles and smaller, creative mid-tier projects. The WWE license alone sold millions of copies every single year. For a stretch, the quality coming out of their studios was genuinely consistent. The company looked solid. Then 2011 happened, and with it, the U-Draw decision. It was a drawing tablet peripheral that had done well on the Wii. THQ decided to produce versions for PS3 and Xbox 360 and manufactured 1.4 million units. Sales were nowhere close to projections. The company absorbed roughly $100 million in losses from a single product, a single bad call. They never recovered. In 2013, they filed for bankruptcy and everything went to auction. Saints Row to Volition, Darksiders to THQ Nordic, the WWE license to 2K. There's a company called THQ Nordic today, but it's a completely different entity that just bought the name. The real THQ is buried under that U-Draw box. These 7 brands share something in common. Each of them once stood at the center of the gaming world. Each of them shaped the childhood of millions. And today, none of them exist in the same way they once did. But they're not completely gone. Their games live on through emulators. Their logos still appear in nostalgic forums. And through videos like this, they are remembered. Because some brands aren't just companies. They represent an era. Which one do you miss the most? Let me know in the comments.